But I want to speak about the red a little bit first. So, and fire, right? I mean, and the soot, right? Like soot, the black, right? So there's some really strange Santa things happening today. If you go look in like what goes down in Holland around this time, where Sinterklaas, who's basically Santa in bishop garb, full with like, what's it called? The crook, and the mitre. He hangs out with these dudes called Zwarte Piet, Black Pete. And it's like some of the most racist shit you'll see if you just Google images of Sinterklaas and Black Pete, because he's got these little dudes in blackface, right? Usually two of them. And I try to like face that one in me that says this is so offensive, turn it off immediately and say, okay, well, let's take another look. And is there a deeper level of this thing? And I guess maybe this will bring me to Odin. So first, just the importance of fire, right? At this time, the fire goes out, you die, right? And we don't have to go many 100 years before now where that is the truth. And it's said that even earlier in some of these traditions, like it was the shaman who would keep the fire and keep the flint. And we found like a lot of flint and fire making tools. Literally, like archaeologists, anthropologists have found their way to this idea that there were fire keepers and fire tenders and fire makers, and right, the ones who kept the mystery of fire. So, I mean, imagine if you never saw a fire started back then, but then one cat would come, carrying the burning twig to start your hearth. Like those people have a lot of power, right? And so, yeah, we found like old skeletons with flint tools and like a lot of other seemingly kind of magical items that perhaps suggest that they were like shamans of the tribe. And people there have made these theories that maybe like fire was not only kept sacred and held, right? And not only as a power trip, but by those who could like kind of revere and respect the fire in the right way. I mean, still in Anipi, like sweat lodge traditions, like there's a fire tender outside and they're holding as much space as the one inside. That's the guy that's singing the songs and banging the drum, all that. So the red very likely could reach back into the flames. And there's a lot of traditions that are still alive, like the Yule log. And some say the Yule is likely named after Odin, because one of Odin's names was Yulner. And Odin rode an 8-legged horse. And this is very likely where the 8 reindeer for Santa's sleigh come from. And we'll get back to Santa's sleigh because this is a very important bit of the myth. So to speak about the soot and the black, I mean, for one thing, we're speaking about darkness, right? We're speaking about the longest night. But also, like the Yule log tradition, you burn a gigantic log, right, on solstice, or maybe now on Christmas Day, and you put it out before it's fully burned, and you keep it around. Like it's in the house for the whole year, and you respect this, and you give it power, right? And if it makes it through the next year to be the first log in the fire, right, then you're blessed. Then it's good. The Yule log has been seen as something that gives fertility. There's been different kind of Santa figures throughout time who actually come and bring you ashes from the Yule. And that helps you get pregnant, right? Helps you like stay fertile, stay alive, keep the tribe alive. So there's something about the coal in the stocking that actually initially probably was not a bad thing. It was probably a beautiful thing, right? So we hear in Moore's poem that Santa's carrying this bag of toys, but back in the day, maybe a bag of flint and a bag of soot and other things like this. I have a friend from England, a really wonderful man who actually lives in Maui too. But what does he do? He does this thing where he has a Yule log every year and he puts like $100 bill on it. And it has to just stay in the house, like by the fireplace for the year. And then like the next year you spend it and then you put another one there. And it brings abundance for the year or something. So I always just like tripped out on that. And I love I love the little pieces that individuals, or most likely more like family groups, and from an older day, this would have been like tribal groups, right? Like that they have the kind of common stream, but they add their own local piece to it. I think that's a really beautiful and important thing.
Well, and that's what I'm hearing here, Brett, is it's like a modge podge of a lot of different things coming together. I mean, when you start to look at every single little aspect of Christmas, you can start to go, wait, why that? And why that? And why have we always done that? You know, these things that you just sort of accept as like part of Christmas. But I have to say, as you're speaking, there's always been a reason why it feels weird to celebrate Christmas in a place like Maui. And listening to all of your stories, I'm like, well, of course it does, because Maui doesn't have these things. It doesn't have the dead of winter where people are just trying to survive. It doesn't have the need to have fires and, you know, all these things that you're talking about. That's probably why it feels weird to celebrate Christmas in a place like this.
Yeah, well, in place is definitely the need for fire, and the wonderful story about Maui bringing fire and stealing it from the mud hens is a great thing.
Well, yes, but not, I mean, not in the same way.
But yeah, I mean, you're outside lamenting the pain of the winter solstice while picking gigantic avocados from a tree, you know, that.
Totally. Are you kidding me? It's December and I'm here with my doors open and like it's not cold. So
Well, and let's honor also that on half of the globe and for 20% of humanity at our time, like that is the longest day of the year, right? And, you know, this isn't the time for the rap, but that causes some issues for tropical astrologers who claim that the zodiac is a seasonal thing and teach the zodiac seasonally. Some of the mysteries actually link kind of more beautifully with southern hemisphere seasons anyway. But another time we could talk about why the tropical zodiac is not seasonal, but it's directional. The directions themselves, something that most of the ancient shamanic traditions very much honor. And yeah, this is a hodgepodge. You know, when you said like this whole Christmas thing's is like a hodgepodge. They're like, oh, this whole Christian thing, it's like a hodgepodge. Because, you know, that's what went down. The Roman Empire was genius to the point where they wouldn't completely like destroy your culture. I mean, you live in a land, you and I were recently speaking about this, where people were beaten for speaking their native tongue, right? And in their thing, it was like, yo, pay unto Caesar what is Caesar's, you know what I mean? Like pay your taxes and it's cool, do your thing. And when the Christian tradition went out, like, yeah, they destroyed a lot of temples, but they also kept a lot of temples intact and just put their holy of holies in the center of it. And then integrated many local traditions into their stream. So much of what we know about like the official Bible story and stuff, it was composed like hundreds of years after Christ and agreed upon and approved and then disseminated. You know, and of course there have been crusades and times where like that religion, you know, the heathens were healed through death or whatever, and others terrifying shit. But, you know, I think a really important thing about like how the Romans and how the Greek were doing it is that they were like actually like able to spread their empires through assimilation rather than destruction alone. So you hear that in a lot of these threads. But I think more importantly than that, I'm going to link this to a personal story where, you know, I read a lot of these old Greek myths and really connect to them and call myself a storyteller for that reason. And you can't find the source, and there's many versions of them, and they will have like common pieces, but they speak differently. And then when I have a story speak through me, and you know, I've had that happen so many times now, it comes to life in its own way. So there's parts, but the characters have different identities. They're suddenly wearing something. You suddenly see like the religion they come from. None of this is written in the canon, you know? So I was asking my friend Neil Kramer one time, you know, who am I to rewrite a myth? He says, I'll tell you who you are. You're human. That's what we're supposed to do. And it's like, oh, cool. And I really see that in these stories. As long as like the important ornaments show up every year, the tree can change. You know what I mean? It's like there are very important keys to the mystery, and the rest is meant to be woven by spirit and will be spoken differently by each of us. And so I think the root of the Christmas tradition will battle forth through this time of consumerism and forgetting and stay alive, you know, in the darkness of these strange electric lights, which themselves, by the way, are just stars. So let's bring this to the sky, yeah?
Yes, please. Because what I find is that bringing it to astrology and bringing it to the sky transcends all of the noise. It's like we all can see and experience the things that are happening in the sky, no matter where we are. So, yes, okay.
Yeah, so for me, and it was recently, like everything changed when I looked to the sky and I saw Santa's sleigh.
Tell us about that.
Well, let's talk about the tree first.
Oh man.
And I'll bring this back to Odin. I was speaking about Odin's eight-legged horse before. And to say this one thing, because I didn't finish this thread about Black Pete, Odin had two black ravens who would like travel through the 9 realms and bring the news of the many lands back to Odin so that he could govern properly. And this is Horse to Pete's job. He heads out before Santa and spies on people to see who's naughty and nice. And then he goes back and like they go back and they rat the big guy, right? So I think there's something actually in these strange black-faced dudes who are hanging out with Bishop Santa in parades, and it just feels so terrible. And I would very much support the side that says, let that thing go away. But I think there's something that links back to these two ravens. And so let's speak about Santa and Odin, right? So Odin hung in the world tree Yggdrasil for 9 days, right? And it was a great torture, and you can see a lot of the Christ on the cross in this story. But that's when he received the runes, right? That's basically when he received that very important form of the magical tradition. And I'm certainly not an authority in like the Norse myths, but I will tell people if they pursue that Odin path, they're going to find a lot of kind of the roots of shamanic Santa there. The reason why I bring him in again now is because I want to get to this tree, right? Because what is the Christmas tree with the star on top? And I've called the tree many things, including the sword of our stone or the spine of Gaia. And it is Earth's pole, right? Our spin axis, which defines the directions. I'm not talking about like magnetic north and south, which swim around. I'm talking about the pole of Earth. And let's speak astronomy a little bit. The primary motion, as it's called, is Earth's daily spin, right? Why does the sun rise in the east? Because Earth is falling in that direction. Earth spins west to east. So our experience on Earth is that the heavens spin east to west, rising in the east and setting in the west. And this spin motion is about the world tree. It's about the rotational axis, right? So a very interesting thing in our day and age is that we have a star that the northern side of the tree points to, and it is called Polaris, or North Star, right? Pole star. And it hasn't had that name for long, and it won't have that name forever, because Polaris is not always our North Star. There's a great cycle of 26,000 years that rearranges where Earth's North Pole and South Pole point in space. But for our whole lives, Polaris is the one. And Polaris over the great year, which is 26,000 years long, is said to be kind of the most precise and exact North Star. Okay. In Hawaii, where you live, in Maui, which is about 20 degrees north latitude, North Star will be 20 degrees altitude. Okay. So like the ground, the horizon is 0. The zenith directly above your head, that's 90. Okay. This is altitude. 0 degrees is the horizon, 90 degrees is the zenith above your head. And in Maui, the North Star is 20 degrees above the ground. Okay, because, and I nerdily call this the latitude principle. The latitude where you are on Earth is the same as the altitude of the North Star in your sky. In fact, I could even apply this to the Southern Hemisphere, where they will never, ever see the North Star ever, because if I called, Melbourne, Australia, 36 degrees south latitude, if I call that negative 36, then it's true that the North Star is 36 degrees altitude below the horizon, and it never rises. Because the North Star and what I call the South Pole space, because at our time, the Southern Hemisphere does not have a Southern Star. There's no star that the South Pole is pointing to. But they're like these so-called celestial poles. Imagine like a spinning bike tire, and all the spokes become a blur, right? But there's this one point that never moves, and that's the center. So because the spine of Gaia, the sword of our stone, the world tree, Earth's rotational axis, is pointing to Polaris, as all of the stars spin about Polaris during the course of the night, Polaris doesn't move, or barely does at all. It is that point in the middle of the wheel, okay? Now, if the altitude of this star equals your latitude on Earth, where on Earth would the star be directly above your head at the zenith? 90 degrees. And the answer is 90 degrees north latitude. Where is that? The North Pole. And this is why Santa lives there. Okay. Because on the North Pole, where actually there's probably not an elves workshop, you kind of need a boat if the maps we see are right. But either way, if you are there standing or floating or whatever it has to be, you would see the North Star directly above your head. And because it's up there, the whole sky 24 hours at a time spins like a big top. Like a big, tent, like the circus tent. It's just spinning like sideways around you. It's like the flat earther's dream up there, by the way. That's kind of like how they think the whole world works. If you're at the equator, where the latitude is 0, the altitude of the North Star is 0. So now the spin axis comes down to your horizon, and the whole sky spins like a wheel. Hawaii is much more like the wheel than the big top because you're at 20 degrees latitude. The North Star is 20 degrees above. The south one's 20 degrees below the horizon. And so the sky is spinning, right? Like on this kind of 20 degree pitch where I'm speaking to you from right now in Berkeley, California. We're about 38 degrees, same as Athens, Greece. We're kind of in between. St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Salem, Oregon, Romania. It's like 45 degrees places where it's halfway in between the big top stylings and the wheel stylings. That's a really hard thing to describe without visuals. And as you know, Amanda, I like to use a lot of moving pictures.
But you just did good. And I can see your hands, and they can't see your hands. But the top and the wheel are helpful, definitely.
Cool. So there's only one place on Earth where this star is on top of the tree, and I will suggest that the lights that we string on a tree are meant to represent the starry sky on the world tree, which is the spin axis. So I would say, like, if we wanted to do our trees right, we'd have to go wireless with those lights and set the trunk on some kind of spinning device that got around once every 24 hours, and we'd be totally tuned in.
You should do that. You should invent that.
Now let's talk about the sleigh, the bear. But it's not called the bear in the story. And this bear of the sky, there's 2 of them, which interestingly, unlike bears on Earth, have long tails.
Wait, how did you just go from a sleigh to a bear? I don't get it.
Exactly. But let me bring us back. Okay, so there are 2 constellations in the northern sky that are called Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the big bear and the little bear. Okay. We usually refer to them as their brightest stars, which are asterisms. Okay. An asterism is either like a super constellation made of stars from many constellations, like one in Hawaii, they call the Navigator's Triangle, or the astronomers call the Summer Triangle, which borrows stars from the constellation Lyra, the harp, Aquila, the eagle, and Cygnus, the swan. And the brightest stars of those 3 constellations create a gigantic triangle in the sky that the astronomers call the Summer Triangle. So that's one example of an asterism. Okay. Another example of an asterism is you take a constellation of stars and you only use some of them to have a different shape. And that's what the Big Dipper is. The Big Dipper is like the body and the strange long tail of the bear. Okay. Why do I bring up bears for Christmas time? It's a good question. Although some tribes do associate the bear as the animal of the north, that's not why. I want to speak about other names that the Dippers held over time and songs that it showed up in. So one is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Or to keep it with the Big Dipper theme, Follow the Drinking Gourd, which, like Swing Low, was a slave song. Why follow the drinking gourd? Because the Big Dipper points to the North Star, right? So this is one of the great astronomical devices for finding the pole star. If you can think of the Big Dipper, 4 stars in the cup and 3 stars as the handle, right? The last 2 cup stars, you can draw a line through them and it points towards Polaris. It points towards the North Star. So why would slaves follow the drinking gourd, which is the Big Dipper in the sky? Because it points north. And that's the way you're going to walk for freedom, right? Also, the North Star is in the same place, but the Big Dipper is going to point to it from a different part of the sky throughout the seasons. And there's a time in the seasons where in the middle of the night, it becomes the gourd in the sky. And that's when we know not only where to walk, but when, because sometimes it's just too cold, yeah? So we have to do this seasonally as well. Swing low, sweet chariot, the same thing, because the chariot was another name for the Big Dipper. And this reaches back into older terms that are still used today, in especially Northern European countries, where the dipper is known as the wain or the wagon. So let me now call this Santa's sleigh. So I was up on a rooftop thinking about the Christmas mysteries one night and staring at Polaris and thinking about Santa at the North Pole. And I was like, oh my gosh, he lives there because that's the place on the earth where we actually see the star on the top of the tree. This may, and I think there's a lot of reasons to argue against this, it may be the Star of Bethlehem that the astrologers, and I mean the wise men, followed, right? Because you can't really follow many stars in the sky because they're all moving through the sky. But Polaris, even in those times long ago, was rather fixed, and so it would draw you north. Pride taking these cats maybe not in the right direction for their destination. And there's a lot of candidates for the great magical Star of Bethlehem. And I don't even want to go there. That's part of the Christmas level 3, right? Level 2 is about Santa in the sleigh. And so I've told you why Santa comes from the North Pole. His sleigh is the wain, the wagon, the Big Dipper, because the Big Dipper points to North Star. But more importantly, because the Big Dipper, like all the stars of the sky, and especially apparently so in the northern sky, they all revolve around the North Star during the 24 hours of day and night. Now, of course, we can't see this during the daylight, but the truth is Santa's sleigh, the Big Dipper, makes its way all around the world in one day. So this is how Santa's able to deliver toys to chimney places around the world. Now, sadly, the star in that constellation, for the most part, can't be seen from the southern hemisphere, and my friends down there, or up there, depending on your point of view, certainly deserve their toys too. So I'm sorry to make this and lens this in the northern hemisphere trip, but that is where these traditions come from. And I'm not speaking of astrology, although Western astrology is mostly rooted in the northern hemisphere too, but certainly like the Santa vibe and the cold at December time and all that, yeah? So here's another cool thing about following the Big Dipper stars to a destination in the sky. And many make this mistake with Polaris because there's this common misconception that Polaris is a particularly bright star. It's not. What's unique about it, though it is like the brightest star in that zone, what's unique about it is because the sword of our stone, the spine of Gaia, the world tree is pointing at that star. It's the one, as we've described before, doesn't move, right? And it's the two stars at the end of the cup of the Dipper that you can draw a line through to find your way to Polaris, to North Star. If you go the other way, if you go the handle way, which is an arched handle in the sky, if you go the way of the bear's tail, or the way of that bit that you pull the wagon by, or perhaps that bit that the wagon is pulled by when you connect it to oxen or 8 horses or reindeer, that part points to a great star called Arcturus, which is an amazingly bright red star. So the astronomers have this cute thing where they say, follow the arc to Arcturus. So go outside tonight if you're in a place where you can see the Big Dipper. Just trace your hand through the hook of the handle. It's like these 3 stars, and it will guide you to a very bright star. We're recording this now in December. So you'll see Arcturus like in the morning sky rising before the sun. And they say follow the arc to Arcturus and spike to Spica. So another beautiful, very blue star. But a blue star is not going to be the star that's Rudolph's nose, is it? No. The red star. Okay, so what happens is you have this wagon that Santa rides in, which is like the 4 stars of the Big Dipper's cup. And then you have the 3 stars of the handle. And before they point you to Arcturus, they point along Bootes, who Arcturus is the alpha or brightest star of. And the stars of that constellation of Bootes or the herdsmen, they also kind of continue along the same arc from the Big Dipper. You got to see in the sky to know what I'm talking about. But basically, you have the wagon, and you have like 4 or like 8-ish stars in this train that lead to the red bright star in the sky, which is Rudolph's nose. And the rest of them, of course, are the other reindeer.
Can you hear our deer again? They're like, yes.
What's that? Yeah, nice.
Totally. They're like, yes, you got it. You nailed it.
I'm channeling the Hawaiian reindeer for the story. Yeah, he's like on Blitzen, right? So yeah, and the whole bit, Santa and the sleigh and the reindeer, they all travel around that star. I'll put something up at my webpage at geminibrett.com where you can see some moving illustrations of this thing. But go to the source, friends. Get off the small screen and go to the big screen that is the sky and celebrate the living marriage of heaven and earth. Go look to the Big Dipper and see Santa and his sleigh and follow the train of the reindeer to the bright red-nosed Rudolph who clears the fog so you get your toys.
Oh my God. I love it. I love it. It's so, it just, I can't wait for level 3, by the way. Like we're at level 2 and you've teased us with there being a level 3. I guess we have to wait another year. So maybe we all can live into this mystery this year. And then next year we can bring the next level of initiation.
Yeah. And I think reclaiming some of the Christ mysteries and honoring the Son, S-U-N, of man, and let's say of human and of all earth beings, right? Those evergreens don't stay green without that bright, amazing, close star of our sky. And linking the Christ mysteries to those who came before him, like Mithras and Horus, and there are many more who were born of a virgin on Christmas Day.
Yeah, what's the virgin part? Can you link that in?
Not this year.
What?
You have to clear level 2 first. And I will know it by the twinkle in your eye and the cherry glow of your cheeks.
Oh, I don't have the twinkle yet. Are you serious?
Or maybe it's just because I don't know yet.
All right. No, I've heard it explained before, but it did kind of go over my head. I don't think I was ready for the mystery.
Well, I could tell you some of the stories. I think importantly, and I'll just end here, though it certainly isn't answering the question you've asked. But if Mary was able to give birth to the child of God, was she not the most highly attained priestess of them all? So let's at least honor the great goddess at this time. So Amanda, I want to ask you, as you kind of maybe are called to reconnect to the solstice celebration. And as you said, in Hawaii, it's not really going to be about bringing the evergreen side because everything's evergreen. Although certainly, as you know better than I, like there's a lot of flowers and branches and leaves that are utilized for offerings, right? And I'm sure there's reasons, but maybe there's something that speaks to you and speaks to the island of, immortality or life during the strain. I mean, maybe it's even lava.
Exactly. I mean, when you said that, I was like, Pele? The volcano? I mean, that would be the biggest symbol. And she's associated with red as well. But that would definitely be a symbol. But the other thing that I really can connect with, even though it's not the evergreen tree, but you just brought it to the world tree, so it doesn't even matter about the evergreen tree as much, is the light. The light and the darkness. The days do get longer here, not dramatically, but they do. And so that idea of holding the light even when it's dark and being the light even when it's dark and celebrating the light and the dark. I'm definitely not anti-dark, but there's that celebration of it. So that's where stringing the lights and lighting the candles. And at Waldorf School they do this gorgeous candle lighting ceremony where the children walk in a spiral that is lined with evergreen branches. There are evergreen trees here that we do, use the branches around Christmas. And the kids walk in this spiral and they go into they walk in with a candle unlit. And then they go to the center of the spiral, they light their candle and they walk out and they place their candle along the spiral. And the whole entire ceremony is meant to signify the walk through life, and the center is their heart, and that's where they get the light, and then they add their light to the rest of the spiral. And it's this gorgeous ceremony. I love it. It's silent. It's just beautiful visually, but I love.
Are they wearing white robes with hoods?
They wear white. They do wear white.
Yeah, I mean, and let's honor that Steiner came from these northern lands.
Exactly.
But, also like that spiral of life and the spiral of light. I was so shocked. I was at Chaco Canyon some years ago. It was actually a summer solstice, which is a hot time to go to Chaco in New Mexico, right? And it's kind of a hard place to get to. It's a really powerful, amazing sight. And it's interesting because I'm just going to bring this in out of place because it came in again. Let's honor again that, as you were saying, like keeping the light in the darkness and keeping the darkness in the light. It's a beautiful thing that it's the winter king who wins at summer solstice. So our friends in the southern hemisphere perhaps could offer like a beautiful balance by like working with the darkness at this time of your longest day, this December solstice. But in Chaco Canyon, I'm watching. Fortunately, when I was staying there, I stayed there 3 nights. And one of the nights, the astronomers were given a presentation, and you could look through their telescopes. And there's a lot of very strong, what we now call archaeo-astronomical alignments at Chaco Canyon, as there are at most of the ancient sites, like many of the heiaus in Hawaii, right? So like one of the famous ones there is the winter solstice alignment, where the wall of a specific temple will point to where the winter solstice sun rises. And I actually got a beautiful discussion with an astronomer that night that was saying, hey, it's really lame that you guys are closing these things down at 5 p.m. because I want to stand on that wall and watch the galactic center rise. He's like, why would you have the galactic center rising? I was like, well, the 0 Capricorn's aligned to the galactic center, Jack. In our day and age. He's like, what do you mean Capricorn? So then we go, I actually didn't say it that way because I always like to speak astronomy with astronomers and then start leaking in a little bit of the astrology. But when I convinced him he was right, the next day he said he'd take me to see the alignment. And unfortunately, I was leaving. And it's fun that I just said when I convinced him he was right, because the truth is we are all one. Anyway, so I was watching the slideshow they were given before they had telescope time. And the slideshow, they show some of the beautiful petroglyph spirals that are there. As we know, there's some in Hawaii as well, and really all over the world. And they're like, yeah, we're not exactly sure what this is about. I mean, we assume that the ancients were speaking about the spiral of life. And then they cut to literally the next slide when he's talking about Polaris as the North Star, and he's showing a time lapse, or rather what we call a star trail photography, where you just like get trailers on all the stars and you shoot a long exposure. And what it looks like when you point to the northern sky from the northern hemisphere is you have Polaris in the middle, and you have all of these concentric circles surrounding it, right? Which are all the stars rotating through or revolving throughout the course of the night around Polaris. Well, the ancients didn't have, I don't think, they had like star trail time-lapse technology, right? And so when you're watching that and you don't have like a record perfectly of the thing, it looks like the sky is spiraling about the northern star. So, I mean, it just like shocked me that they could show these spirals and skip to the next slide, which is literally showing the spiral, which is the spiral of life. And really importantly, though, yeah, our cameras do catch concentric circles, the truth is the Earth and our whole solar system with the sun are moving through space. And we're actually moving generally north. So those circles do make a spiral. So this spiral of light celebration that your children are participating in, is so many have. And, let's just honor the so many beautiful people who have passed like the flame of Bridget from candle to candle over the centuries, etc. Where there's a really important thing about lighting candles, keeping candles in the window at this time of year. These are all parts of the tradition. But, where I'm based as the starry teller, every flame is a star to me, and every star is a flame. So there is something about the stars, though they seem to be circling, they are spiraling over time. And this is the great spiral of life.
Wow. So I just got a nice bonus, an unexpected bonus. You just reframed the Waldorf candle lighting ceremony for me. That now gets to be astrological too. So this is just brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brett, for all of this wisdom, for helping us just reach another layer of these mysteries and find deeper levels of meaning. Because again, to me, it's like, if we can find and we can connect with some sort of meaning and purpose behind what we're doing, it just adds so much magic to it. It just adds just so much more for us to experience through this time. So thank you.
Yeah, ho, ho, ho. I mean, it's my pleasure, of course, as always, Amanda. And I'll just invite the listeners to see where in your ceremonies you are already celebrating these things. And maybe there's ways that you want to do it or that you have already shifted to it. Like, let's honor fertility, right? And let's not just only speak about the fertility and the continuance of our species and such, right? But the fertility of the mysteries in our time, bringing them back from this longest night where they have been destroyed and chased underground, right? And we're hearing these sounds in the sky and on the earth. So whether it's bells and candles or red and white or whatever you want to do to honor the truth of fertility as a symbol for what you wish to be fertile in your life as you are spreading the seeds of the mysteries, incorporate that into your tradition, please. Let's celebrate immortality. Let's celebrate standing tall and staying green with life in the darkest night and when so much appears to die. So what in your life has died for you? And what is a symbol of the strength that has seen you through? Let's bring that into our mysteries at this time. And let's string those lights and remember that we can bring the stars right into our own lives.
Oh, God, that was good. I'm making an Instagram post with those words all over it. So good. Thank you, Brett. It is always a pleasure. You guys, you get to hear more from Brett in our upcoming forecast event. So he is going to be one of our featured astrologer powerhouse people. And he's also going to be a 2020 Inner Circle guide. So if you like Brett's style and you love the history and you love the storytelling, he is going to be taking a whole month with us as an Inner Circle guide. So you'll get to learn a lot more from him. So again, thank you. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And of course, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho. Thank you so much for tuning in today to our bonus Christmas episode. If you loved this episode as much as I did, feel free to give us a rating or share it with your friends. And if you love this and you love Brett's style, please don't miss your opportunity to gather around the fire once more and hear his tale of 2020. Brett's going to be featured among 11 other astrologers at our free online 2020 Global Forecast Marathon event. You can reserve your spot today by going to astrologyhub.com/2020forecast. We'll be walking through every month of 2020 and giving you a snapshot of what's in store, key dates, energetic signatures, and all the astrologers' take on global and personal events to come. And make sure you register even if you can't make the dates and times. We'll be offering the replays for free for 48 hours, or you can have them as a bonus gift when you become an Inner Circle member. More on this soon. Okay, everybody, until next time, it's been so wonderful to share this evening with you, and I can't wait to catch you on the next episode. You guys, I am so excited. I've been waiting for this for months. It is with pleasure that I officially invite you to our free 5th annual Global 2020 Astrology Forecast Marathon event. Registration is now open. The event is taking place online January 9th through 12th, and it is going to be epic. Just go to astrologyhub.com/2020forecast to reserve your free seat today. We're featuring 12 of your favorite astrologers, including Kai Pacha, Christopher Renstrom, Stormy Grace, Anne Orderly, Gemini Brett, Jennifer Rassiopi, just to name a few. I'll be broadcasting live with these astrological powerhouses for 5 hours per day, walking through every month of the year and making sure you know about key dates, important transits, and how the energies may interact with global situations like the health of our planet and financial and political institutions, and the types of energies you may see playing out in your personal life, in your career, your health, and your relationships. Our previous attendees have called this event an astrological smorgasbord, and they rave about it every year. If you're curious about 2020, what the big shift in energy could mean for our world and your life, and if you're ready to consciously co-create with the cosmic energies, then this is the event for you. Just go to astrologyhub.com/2020forecast and reserve your seat now. And even if you can't join us for the whole live event, tuning in for 20 or 30 minutes whenever you can is going to make a huge difference for you as we embark upon this new decade. We will only send the replay of this event to those who register, so make sure you register so you can have access to the limited time recordings. I am so excited to share this event with you so we can enter into this next decade in style together. Just go to astrologyhub.com/2020forecast and reserve your free spot today.
Hi, this is Chris Kaplan, the producer of the Astrology Hub podcast. This episode is over, but check the show notes for links to products and services you've heard about during this episode. And if you enjoyed our show, please subscribe and rate using the subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcasts.